Hi, good evening to everyone. I'm Dr. Philip McMillan. Today, I'm going to tell you what I think is that Geert is right and his predictions were correct. The problem is that the manifestation of his predictions don't seem to happen immediately, and this is where the problem comes about. So, when Geert said that by the end of June, July, that he expected a major surge to happen, this is exactly what is happening, but what we're not seeing is the same kind of disease presentation. That's therefore the problem. And so, therefore, people would ignore what he said, not realizing that he has been consistently predicting correctly what's going to happen. Now, Gert is very, very worried at the moment, and he thinks that he needs to step back because of what he expects to happen. I think one of the differences in terms of what I think is that I expect some degree of respiratory compromise, but I don't expect it to necessarily be the main manifestation of disease. What I am looking for is what I've been talking about all along. I am expecting the storm, the spike triggered autoimmune response mechanism. That's what I think is happening at the moment, and that's what I expect to happen in the near future. It's a really important differentiation. So, as I explained to people, the reason you had severe COVID 19 in the first phase of the pandemic was because it was novel. Because it's no longer novel, it can't trick the interferon system as easily. So you don't see that same kind of disease presentation. But I'm going to show you the latest news update, and I'm also going to show you an important preprint that has been in preprint for the longest while that really helps to explain what I think is the most important point about Gert's prediction. So, before I start, as usual, just reminding you that more than ever, this is why we're putting together Are You Prepared Against Disease X? This is a book. We're doing it on Kickstarter. And what we want you to do is join us. And just by going here on the email, and you will join our newsletter and you will get updates about the Kickstarter. It's not yet started, so there's nothing to donate as yet, but it's coming in time. And you will get the free Capital COVID conversations. The important thing about this document is that it's a collation of this very important COVID discussion in February 28th of 2024, and it featured many of the leading people speaking. This is Senator Ron Johnson. And what we've done in collaboration with Lumientia is that we have collated or just condensed the information, what Dr. Malone had said. We have Jessica Rose here, and it's all collated, very easy to read. This was Edward Dowd, so that everything they had said is easy for you to get to and make sense of. Part of the reason of doing that is because so many people have struggles when they're talking with family, friends, trying to explain to them what they've been hearing. Nobody wants to listen. Now you'll have a condensed version of the critical information that you can directly share with them. Very, very valuable. So make sure that you join that. Additionally, I have coming up just shortly, and it's hopefully part of a series, McMillan and Members, Session 1. And this is where we will just discuss all the issues frankly and openly. That's where you can ask me questions and I'll be trying to answer them. Look in the description below for that link. Let's get back to the main issue here. And there's a reason why I focused on what Geert was saying. And he seemed quiet, but he's still doing his presentations to his group. It's a paid group, but I think it's worth it if you're joining, where he shares his ideas and his ongoing information. I hope to be able to interview him again soon, and I'll be able to get some more insights. But here is what is happening at the moment. And so this is from the LA Times. And this is a more infectious COVID variant fueling California's relentless surge. And this was published on the 19th of August, 2024. So this is brand new with regards to the information. And they're talking about the flirt variants, which is really the descendants of JN1. And they're saying it's continuing to spawn infections at a dizzying rate. And so the levels, the coronavirus levels in wastewater, that's in the stool samples, reaching some of the highest levels since 2022. And so this is what is going on at the moment. And when they looked at the coronavirus levels in sewage, were 84% of last year's winter peak in California. Remember, this is summer, so we haven't even hit the winter as yet. So this is the kind of thing that is going on that really should be concerning. Now, what's happening is that everybody's relaxed about it because they're saying COVID is just mild, it's no big deal. When I show you the research, you'll understand why I'm concerned and why I'm talking about storm. You need to really see this to try and understand what is happening. Additionally, what they're finding is that the rate at which COVID tests are coming back positive continues to rise. And so in hospitals or in medical facilities, 14.7% of tests done came back positive. And that's the week ending August 12th, a rate greater than was ever seen last winter and summer. So, this is the reality of what is happening, not just in California. It's just that they happen to be testing. This is going to be happening all across highly vaccinated regions. What does it mean? And this is a concern. Public health is silent on it. You don't hear them talking about it. Other than this newspaper report, you're not seeing this in the mainstream news. They're just not saying anything. It's almost as if they're pretending that it has gone away. We have done what needed to be done. The pandemic is over. Let's move on. That's not good science because we still have a problem. And this is not endemic circulation. So a lot of people will tell you, well, it's just the virus. It's like the cold. It gets endemic after a while. This is not endemic circulation. This is a surge. This is one of the highest surges in the summer that we have ever seen. How is that possible? That's a whole different question. I've covered that before, but for the time being, I'm trying to explain to you why this critical thing about a storm is so important. Spike triggered autoimmune response mechanism. If you've not heard about it before, it's because I'm the only person who is talking about it. This is my acronym. Nobody else has it. If you hear anybody else talking about it, they got it from me. This is me doing the research. I'm going ahead of the science here to try and predict what is going to happen next. In order to help me to understand it and to help you understand it, I'm using a preprint, and this has been in preprint now for the longest while. Maybe it's just too important for them to publish it, but this was looking at SARS-CoV-2 spike protein accumulation in the skull meninges brain axis. And they were looking at potential long term neurological complications. So this was posted on the 5th of April 2023. It's still waiting on the peer reviewers to get it through and for it to be published. Now, this actually is a really important paper. And the bit that I want to concentrate on is not so much the skull, but I'll show you what they did to work out what happens with the spike protein. So this is the bit that hasn't really been done, and this is why this paper is so very important. And what I'll show you, I'll tell you what they did, and then I'll show you what happened. So they were looking at all potential tissues that were targeted by SARS-CoV-2. And so they were labeling, they used a fluorescent label on the spike protein, and this was in mice. Now, they recognize it's not a direct measurement of how well the virus infects cells, but it's a proxy to see how well the virus is likely to infect cells. So they're just looking at the spike protein, how well it binds to these specific receptors. The wild type spike protein they found had a low binding affinity for the mouse ACE2. And so they created another kind of way that it could bind to ACE2, and they labeled it, and they also compared it to what happened with the influenza virus, hemagglutinin HA, for comparison. They then injected it, and then they subjected the mice to the fluoroscopy to then try and see what happens when they inject the spike protein. So you have to realize that this is not necessarily the same as infection. But the reason why this is so important is because what I have said is that because of IgG4, and if you've never heard the term, you probably should do one of the courses, but essentially it's a tolerant antibody. It tells your immune system to not respond to a virus or another protein, like what happens with bee stings and so on. This means the immune system is going to be sluggish, lethargic. And the concern I have is that what can happen is that for people who are not mounting an effective response to the virus, they end up with viral sepsis. That means the virus is circulating in the bloodstream and infecting many cells that have ACE2. And that's the basis of what I'm talking about when I speak of the storm. My prediction is that as the virus circulates through and starts to trigger immune responses across the body, you then get almost an autoimmune kind of picture in the context of continuous infection and circulation of the virus. And I'm predicting that this is what's happening, why we have such high levels. People are not able to clear the virus. And so they're infecting, reinfecting, infecting, reinfecting, and it just keeps on going. So they then inject this and then they look at it 30 minutes after. This is what it looks like. So mice model, here we go. This represents the mouse, the original one with the wild type virus. This represents what happened with influenza. And you can see this is concentrated in the lungs of the mice. This is the head of the mice going down to the tail. Look at what happens with spike protein when it circulates. Look how many organs are lit up: the brain, the heart, the kidneys, the intestinal tract. It is just lighting up the whole body in a way that you could never believe was possible. And so when people talk about mild infection, they're having mild symptoms, but the virus is quite possibly circulating at this kind of level, infecting and causing low grade inflammation. It is actually an absolutely frightening consideration as to what may be going on. We need to understand this very, very quickly. Because if this is happening, and that's the only thing that makes sense to me with IgG4, high viral titers, continuous reinfections, you just have to think that on balance, you're having this kind of circulation occurring in people. They feel a bit unwell, they feel fatigued, not quite right, but they don't have any respiratory symptoms, and therefore nobody's worried. Believe me, when you look at this, I am worried because, as I said, this is quite likely what is happening. And if you can see brain, heart, kidneys, lungs, intestines, this is pretty serious if this is occurring. And I can't see any reason why this would not be occurring at this point. So, this is where I think that Geert is right, but the prediction as to how it would present, we don't know. It's not going to present typically as respiratory disease. There will be a respiratory component. Some people may get a viral pneumonia, but the actual cytokine storm that happened in the context of the original, the novel virus, I don't think that's going to happen as much, very small amounts with people who have interferon autoantibodies or something like that. But that will not be the typical presentation. Instead, I still maintain we are going to see the storm. When the virus goes and infects multiple cells all through the body, triggers this immune response, we then have this very serious situation of inflammation. And that's something that I'm trying to put together. I'm trying to predict what will happen to all of these organs: brain, heart, kidneys, lungs, intestines. Because it's only when you understand that you are then able to try and mitigate it. You can then do the right testing to see who is affected. It's not going to affect everybody, but if this even affects 2% of the population, it will decimate our health services because there will be so many people who would be sick. So this is pretty serious. And I think that, as I said, I am corroborating what I've heard from Geert for so long. I think he was completely right. It's just that people don't see what it is that he was saying just yet. Remember, this is the news story on the 19th of August, 2024. Another flirt surge is occurring in California and likely to be occurring in multiple parts of the world. So, yes, as remember, please join us as we continue to prepare for Disease X. And believe me, Disease X is not new. It's going to be the same thing we're dealing with all the time, but called a different name. Please get prepared. Help us to put this together. That's what we want, your support. And as I said, you will get, along with this, the Capital COVID Conversations, valuable information for you to be able to challenge and share with friends. And finally, join me on this first session. Any question you have, I will try to answer. And that will be the question and answer session in the near future. Have a great evening as we continue to explore the science and try and find the answers that are relevant to you and your loved ones. Have a great evening.